Understanding feels elegant, but it is not. Real understanding destabilizes. It begins with tension, mental tension. In 1963, Richard Feynman, reflecting on complex problems, described what it feels like to confront confusion directly. He did not call it comfortable. It begins with friction. You encounter a problem. It resists your intuition. Your model fractures. Your certainty dissolves. And something uncomfortable appears. Confusion, not distraction. Not ignorance, but structural instability. You almost see, but not fully. You approach coherence. It withdraws. And that gap widens. Most people retreat here. They prefer clarity. Immediate clarity. They want resolution restored. Quickly. But serious inquiry disagrees. In physics especially. Confusion is diagnostic. It signals a boundary, a cognitive limit. You have reached the edge of structure, and the mind reacts with irritation, with discomfort. We misread this reaction. We call it failure. We internalize inadequacy. We step backward. Scientists pause instead. They examine the rupture. Which assumption failed? What symmetry collapsed? Which analogy missiled us? Confusion becomes information. Information about limits. Limits of models. Limits of language. Limits of intuition. Consider quantum theory. Wave and particle coexist. No classical picture survives. Mathematics holds. Intuition resists. That resistance is confusion. Consider relativity. Time is not absolute. Space is not fixed. Simultaneity dissolves. Conceptual stability fractures. Again, confusion. Progress rarely feels smooth. It feels disorienting. Because understanding reorganizes structure. You think you understand, then a contradiction appears. You revise. Another contradiction emerges. You adjust again. This cycle persists. Discomfort accumulates. Most stop here. They conclude inability. They withdraw. But intellectual growth requires endurance. Endurance inside uncertainty. If you never feel confused, you are rehearsing, not discovering. Repetition feels comfortable. Discovery does not. Discovery disrupts equilibrium, then reconstructs it. Slowly. Confusion is transitional. It marks transformation between ignorance and deeper structure, between simplicity and coherence. The mind resists transition. It prefers stability. Even incorrect stability. Premature answers soothe, but they distort. Real inquiry tolerates delay, delay of resolution, delay of comfort, delay of certainty. This tolerance differentiates thinkers. Not brilliance, not speed, but patience. Patience with instability. Because instability precedes insight. Always. High-level thinking rarely feels intelligent. It feels inadequate. You feel exposed, uncertain, fragmented. And that sensation misleads you. It whispers limitation, but it often signals expansion. You have reached your boundary. Now the boundary can move. If you remain, if you observe carefully, if you resist escape. Confusion is not the opposite of understanding. It is the threshold of it. And very few physicists have described this internal experience. With honesty, with precision, with realism, as clearly as Richard Feynman in 1963. Here is how he put it.
Thinking about something you don't understand, you have a terrible, uncomfortable feeling called confusion. It's a very difficult and unhappy business. And so most of the time you're rather unhappy, actually, with this confusion. You can't penetrate this thing. Now, the confusion is because we're all some kind of apes that are kind of stupid, working against this, trying to figure out to put the two sticks together to reach the banana, and we can't quite make it, the idea. And I get that feeling all the time that I'm an ape trying to put the two sticks together. So I always feel stupid. Once in a while, though, the sticks go together on me, and I reach the banana.
People say to me, are you looking for the ultimate laws of physics?
Feynman's words illustrate reality, not abstract theory. but lived experience. He felt confusion. Repeatedly, he called it uncomfortable, a terrible feeling, a mental tension, like an ape trying to reach with two sticks for a banana. Sometimes it failed, often it failed, and sometimes success appeared, a fleeting insight, a sudden connection. That feeling is universal for all thinkers, for all scientists, for anyone exploring complexity. The lesson is clear. Confusion signals engagement. It is productive, not a flaw. It is a doorway to understanding, to deeper insight, to structural learning. Even failure is useful. Each attempt records data. Each mistake informs. Each gap highlights limits. Feynman embraced this process. He did not escape. He tolerated uncertainty. He observed carefully. He analyzed relentlessly. He learned and repeated. This approach defines methodology, not genius alone, not inspiration alone. It is discipline, a disciplined mind, a mind trained to sit with unease, to observe internal friction, to extract meaning, even when it resists, even when it frustrates, even when it seems futile. This is intellectual endurance, endurance inside ambiguity. It shapes comprehension. It shapes cognition. It structures discovery. It is deliberate. It is slow. It is incremental. You do not feel intelligent. You feel inadequate. You feel lost. You feel frustrated. But insight forms. Quietly, uncomfortably, gradually. Your mind reorganizes. New patterns emerge. Old assumptions collapse. New assumptions stabilize. The banana is reached. The sticks align, not by luck, not by charm, but by sustained observation, by repeated attempts, by tolerance of confusion, by engagement with difficulty. And this is replicable. Any committed thinker can experience it. If they resist escape, if they tolerate failure, if they learn from error. Feynman models this, not as a parable, but as a framework for serious inquiry. He normalizes the struggle. He validates discomfort. He instructs endurance. He shows the method. The internal process matters more than immediate success, because progress is structural. It is cumulative. It is experimental. It requires discomfort. It demands patience. It fosters insight without confusion. No structural comprehension exists without discomfort. No meaningful learning occurs. Once insight emerges, reflection begins. You examine process. What led here? Which assumptions shifted? Which models adapted? Which patterns emerged? This is metacognition. Thinking about thinking. Feynman emphasized this, not casually, not for rhetoric, but as method. Every failure informs. Every gap teaches. Every frustration is data. The brain accumulates structure, incrementally, gradually, with each attempt, with each error. This is iterative learning, not sudden revelation, not instant clarity, not immediate comprehension. Insight is reconstruction. After collapse, after destabilization, after repeated attempts, you reorganize understanding. You synthesize ideas. You refine principles. Physics operates this way. Quantum mechanics demonstrates it. Relativity illustrates it. Even classical physics required iterations. Patterns of thought evolve. Internal friction persists. And tolerance is essential. Without tolerance, progress halts. Without patience, insight fades. Without reflection, confusion repeats. But with deliberate observation, with disciplined endurance, with careful analysis, you approach mastery. Understanding stabilizes. Not perfectly, not permanently, but functionally, enough to predict, enough to explain, enough to explore further. Feynman's reflections reveal method, not magic, not inspiration alone, Method requiring effort, attention, care, observation, and acceptance of discomfort. This is transferable beyond physics, beyond science, beyond theory. Any complex problem behaves similarly. Cognitive limits appear. Mental instability arises. Confusion signals growth. It demands response, analysis, persistence, adjustment, and synthesis. Even in daily challenges, this framework applies. Decision-making, problem-solving, creative work, learning new concepts, all involve disruption, all involve tension, all involve repeated failure, and eventual reorganization. Feynman's ape metaphor endures. Not for humor, not for charm, but for pedagogy. He models honest inquiry. He validates discomfort. He communicates strategy. He demonstrates engagement. Intellectual endurance matters more than immediate performance, more than talent, more than intuition. Endurance transforms confusion into comprehension, into structured knowledge, into discovery. This is cognitive training, mental sculpting, through tension, through repeated attempts, through reflection, through deliberate observation, through persistence, and insight, when it comes, feels earned, feels reliable, feels structural. You recognize connections. Patterns reveal themselves. Assumptions align. Misconceptions dissolve. The banana is reached, and you will fail again. You will be confused again. This is cyclical. This is scientific. This is human. Feynman teaches process, not only outcome. He shows practice, not only principle. He conveys methodology, embedded in lived experience. This is the essence of high-level thinking, of scientific reasoning, of learning deeply, of discovery itself. And for you, as observer, as learner, as thinker, his lesson is clear. Embrace confusion, engage discomfort, observe carefully, persist deliberately, reflect constantly, and occasionally insight emerges. Structural, reliable, earned. This is the rhythm, the method, the approach, the intellectual discipline, the Feynman way. And now, with this perspective, every moment of confusion, every failed attempt, every frustrating block becomes opportunity, becomes signal, becomes progress, becomes science, and you participate in the same process. The timeless practice, the disciplined inquiry, the pursuit of understanding, guided by curiosity, tempered by patience, validated by reflection, and inspired by Richard Feynman.